Hello, YouTube. Luigi here. I have a lot of things I want to cover. I actually have bullet points. I don't have a script. I'm going to speak off the top of my head. I've decided my videos sound better when I do so, as opposed to reading a script. A read script sounds like it's read, and I wouldn't blame you if you clicked off of it. I've got bullet points. And there's an awful lot to discuss here. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm going to talk about climate refugees, wildfires, assistance, rescue, search and rescue for those in distress. And I'm not even going to tell you what the last one is. It's so ghastly. You know, today's Saturday the 14th. Yesterday was Friday the 13th, harvest moon. I stayed up in the cold to wait for it to rise and photographed it not very well. So what does that mean? It means Dorian has just wiped out the Bahamas. You know, it lingered for over 48 hours, basically in one spot with 185-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Few buildings can take that on a sustained level for over 48 hours. Very few. And if you look at the pictures of Bangladesh, of the Bahamas, we'll talk about Bangladesh. It's my guess that maybe 1 out of 100 buildings is standing. You know, and those buildings need to be looked at in terms of why did they stand. They may have lost roof shingles, but they're standing. Okay, let's talk about climate refugees. And we're going to go back a ways. We're going to go back to the Arab Spring in northern Africa. These people could no longer grow food, climate, because of prolonged drought. So they ran to the cities, crowded into the cities, and there started a revolt, which we call the Arab Spring. So here's one example of climate refugees affecting the geopolitical, complexion of at least a region. The Syrian refugees, they could no longer grow food because of a prolonged drought. They crowded into the cities, which, the Russians just bombed to hell, so they get on the move. And where do they go? They go to Europe. Europe absorbs millions of these people. Climate refugees, changing the complexion of Europe. Guatemala. We think of Guatemala as this lush rainforest country, but Guatemalans have been in a prolonged drought, can no longer grow food. So what do? They form these caravans, and they march all the way up to our southern border, where they are turned away. Climate refugees, okay? If they could still grow food in Guatemala, they would have come up here. They love their home. Okay, they would not have done it. You got to be under great distress to just pack up your whole life and family and walk from Guatemala to our southern border. And this, I'm going to take a little diversion here. This makes me, I'll do it later. Now we're in the Bahamas. There's nothing there. There's no infrastructure. 16,000 people need to be evacuated because there's nothing there. Life is unsustainable. Trump has already said he's not going to grant them temporary emergency refugee status. Why? Oh, they're all rapists or something. Trump. Well, this is a tough decision. Individually, we may all want to be compassionate and generous and do every single thing we possibly can to help our brothers and sisters in distress. But maybe the leader of a nation has to think a bigger picture, And this leads me to Bangladesh, which is like a low-lying country where the next mega typhoon is just going to wipe it off the map. They suffer severely with these storms. There was one storm in recent history that killed over 200,000 people in Bangladesh alone. So India, talking about borders now, India has built its border wall with Bangladesh. India has no love of Muslims, certainly doesn't want them in their country, and has built this wall. And you know what really surprises me is when there was persecution of Muslims in Myanmar, where did they go? They went to Bangladesh, the most low-lying country on the planet, one that's going to get swept away in the next mega typhoon. And why would anyone go to Bangladesh? So, India built its wall in anticipation of climate refugees. And this made me think that maybe Trump is building his wall, or trying to build his wall, not because of immigration, but because he is far-sighted enough, as much as he denies climate change, to see an onslaught of climate refugees clamoring at our southern border. We look at those people down there, those children in cages, everybody detained, and our hearts just cry. But, you know, desperate times are upon us all as a planet because of this nonstop, ever-worsening juggernaut of climate disaster, planetary peril. Something to think about. Wildfires. The Amazon is burning. 20% of our oxygen comes from the Amazon rainforest. 20% of the whole world. They say there are even bigger fires in South Central Africa. Russia's burning, especially Siberia, where there have wildfires almost never get that far north. Siberia is burning. You know? British Columbia, which always, no matter how worse you see it get in California, British Columbia has more fires than California. More fires. And there's a Greek island called Evia, which is on fire right now. You know, when you're on an island like the Bahamas, where do you go? What do you do? What do you do? So wildfires, because of stalled weather systems, because of the loss of sea ice in the Arctic, which made the jet stream sluggish, stalled weather systems, depends if you're on the trough side or the ridge side, can set up areas of prolonged drought, which are conducive to massive wildfires on a scale that we have never seen before. So what are all these wildfires doing? They're putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Exactly what we need right now. So let's jump back to the Bahamas. This is just one example, but I'm going to use it and extrapolate it into even worse conditions in the future. People are waiting for help. Okay, the Coast Guard went in there and did its thing, but most of the aid that's arriving is coming in on small American private planes with donations they gathered at churches from individual people, put in boxes, and landed wherever they could possibly land. There's no distribution network there, but at least generous, kind-hearted, compassionate individual Americans, forget our government, are doing this on their own. There are still thousands of dead bodies yet to be recovered. They say the stench of rotting bodies down there is overwhelming, and it's got an unmistakable, putrid smell that you know, people and cadaver dogs can identify right away. So where am I going with this? You know, the Bahamas are a year away from getting power restored, a year away from getting water restored because their standpipes, their water towers were destroyed. Here's what's going to happen, and it's already happening in the Bahamas. This is not a bold prediction because it should be an obvious conclusion. The amount of people in distress as this climate continues to decimate population centers and people are stuck on their rooftops waiting for help, the amount of people in distress is going to far outpace rescuers, first responders, help in general, is going to far outpace the ability of those who are supposed to do this to reach everybody. People are going to die of dehydration on their rooftops in a massive flood waiting to be rescued because nobody's coming. Nobody can come. These first responders, these rescue people are going to be stretched so thinly, and the amount of people needing help will far, far, far outpace those who are in a position to give help. It's only going to get worse, people. We're seeing the very beginnings of it now. So just just hold on to your shorts here. And the last one, I read this morning. I don't say this to be ghoulish. I don't say this to be macabre. But, you know, in desperate times, people will do desperate things. And if you're starving, you will do desperate things. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just passing along information, okay? It shocked me, but it didn't surprise me when I thought about it. Analysts are now predicting the rise of cannibalism on these isolated islands where help can't get to. For example, where the strong who are starving will overpower the weak who are half dead from starvation and eat them. This article went on to say that this, as ghastly as it sounds, this is a way, if the storm didn't do it, this is a way of culling the population. We have 7.7 billion people, and it is this incredible number of people that put pressure on the resources of the planet. Pressure that the planet simply can't, deliver without great environmental cost. So don't mishear me. I'm just passing along information. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I understand the desperation in which starving people might act. That's all. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. You know, all these things were predicted by people like Guy McPherson over a dozen years ago. And now they're happening at an accelerated rate. It's no longer, the end of the century, we have time. There's no time. It's happening right before our eyes, okay? It's no longer climate change. It's abrupt climate change, pushing the species, meaning us, our favorite species, as Guy McPherson says, Homo sapiens, to the verge of extinction. All right. Some sobering thoughts. I just needed to pull them together and share them with you. God bless you. I love you all. Take good care. As Guy McPherson cautions people to do, live life with urgency. Live life as if you're going to die tomorrow. But live lives of excellence. Embrace right doing and love the people around you. That's the most important one. Love the people around you. Bye-bye.